you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Were we holding you up?
No, I was just getting ready. Well, doing little things. We have our wiki, of course, with everything in it, and our home with our syllabus. Last week we went over the iPod equipment, went to a little bit of iTunes, importing files, and a little bit of syncing. What I wanted to review today, or just make sure you're clear on, is locating and downloading MP3 files, locating and subscribing to podcasts, have you share your resources, and then also I want to talk about the recording, the actual voice recording into the iPod, and demonstrate on that, because then on our assignments, the next time we meet, which is going to be on December the 17th, I would want you by that time to have recorded something and uploaded that file and then link it to here. And if you, we can work on how that linking and everything is going to happen, but sometime between now and the next couple of weeks when we meet, I would like you to actually do a recording. And that could be recording a lesson that you're teaching. It could be recording a 2-minute, thoughts about something, like if you were making your own podcast, and as you are listening to different podcasts or listening to different broadcasts, you might have some ideas of what you might want that to be. So I want you to go through that experience of doing a recording that someone else would be listening to, and will be the ones listening to your recordings as we get that. Also, I put another item in there. There is something called the EduBlog Awards, and there are 4 nominations for Best Use of Audio. And what I'd like you to do sometime between now and then is take a look at that link and vote for one that you determine is the best, because there are 4 people doing podcast type things, and so they're up for an award. So it would be nice if we gave them a little input on about what we thought was good, and maybe you could visit their sites, and that would also give you some places to get other additional content for your iPod. Eventually what we're going to be doing is adding your favorites to the playlist wiki. There's another wiki that we're kind of working our wiki with their wiki, and so when we are building your resources, and if you have a favorite out of your resources that you think would be helpful, we'd like you to add that into their wiki so that we're all sharing knowledge together. We have just going over the review. Today we're going to review the posted resources, and I know that some of you, I looked, have added some things to your resources page, and if you haven't, so there's an opportunity for you to get that going. Just beginning your notebook for learning and having that bibliography of things that you're listening to. Before I go into reviewing those resources, I know I just cleared up 2 questions for you ladies about the symbol that you see in when you hook up your iPod for the ejecting. That's what you were clicking to get it off. Do you have any other issues or problems in downloading and loading up the MP3 files that we were playing with last time?
We had one more question, but we forgot.
You forgot what it was? Okay. But the actual process of taking an MP3, getting it off the web, and putting it in your iPod is not difficult? You're okay? You're clear on that? Okay. So I wanted to review the resources and talk about actually subscribing to podcasts, because we didn't spend a lot of time searching through the podcast channel. I gave you some ideas on the resources page. If you come up with, and I know that there was a couple of discussion, Julia and I think Ann, you both posted something to the discussion area about these are other resources. If you would just go ahead and populate that onto this resources page.
I tried to, it didn't take it. That's how I wound up on discussion.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when you went to edit page, it wouldn't take the edit.
And so did you save the edits at that point?
Yeah, click save at the bottom, but it didn't save it.
So let me just copy this one from yours and see if I can get it to come in and give you a demo on that. So, okay, under Anne-Marie's discussion here, other resources that you have found. So I'm just going to copy this here. Okay. Edit copy. And I'll go back to our page. And I'm going to click on edit this page. Now we can't all edit it at the same time. If I'm editing it and you try to edit it now, you'll get a message that says it's already being edited by someone else. And I just wanted to I'm going to put it underneath here. Hit a couple of returns, paste it in, take out that thing, iPods and education, brief research, and this one I would probably want to put the HTTP in there, because that way if you have HTTP it will automatically make it a hot link for you. And then this one here, because I think it has iPod. Let's do that. Like that. Now when I save it, let's see if this works. they're all there. So you'll need to practice that and see, unless there's something that, it should be open and you shouldn't have any problems. I noticed you were able to save in your own spaces on your own pages.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it didn't work on this particular resource page. So if you come across anything else that's resource related about, what we're learning, you stick it in there. If you have actual content that you come up with that you think is good.
Yeah, I added mine to the...
Yeah, studying Spanish with your iPod. This is yours new. So you were able to put that in.
But I clicked on... Can you go up again?
Mm-hmm.
I clicked on edit this page, and then I clicked on text editor.
Okay.
And then I pasted it there.
Now,
What's the difference?
wasn't it a little bit more confusing with the text editor because you see all the wiki
A little bit more
codes?
confusing, but I
Because
found
if I go to
it.
text editor, what it does is it shows you the wiki codes, and it's no longer, it gets a little scary that way. It's no longer the what you see is what you get. But when wikis first came out, you had to know that it was 2 double slashes and all of these things to be able to make that wiki. So now they're point and click, and it's what you see is what you get. So I would stay with the visual editor. I mean, it's okay if you want. It doesn't scare you. That's
No, it
fine.
doesn't
Most
scare
people
me.
would look at that and say, "Well, no, that's it." So okay. Any questions on that? No. So if you come up with that. So if we're looking, I know Tiffany, you had entered something in there because I had saw that you had put the iPods in Education from David Bow. He's an Apple Distinguished Educator. He has some very nice website resources on iLife Suite. And then this Jen Abrams. This is kind of neat, Dancing into the Future. I thought that was...
So I got stuck in there.
Why?
Because there was so much good stuff just about technology and just even having the discussion. I think the hardest thing right now in modern dance is that people are trying to change it from modern to contemporary. And so students don't really understand that, and that there were several discussions specifically about that in regards to the switch from modern to contemporary that were so interesting that
So you're going to spend your whole 1 hour credit just on this website.
It was
and
so
there's
much
plenty
fun.
there.
There was tons
Yeah.
of stuff there.
And how did you initially find this one?
Through Merce Cunningham's website, because Merce Cunningham has dance forums. It's
Okay.
an application that you can use to choreograph on a computer.
Wow.
So, and I was hoping that there was a podcast for discussion about that,
Mm-hmm.
but there wasn't. But he uses a lot of technology in his choreography, and he's one of
Well,
them.
and then, but this, what is this link that is the podcast piece here?
Yeah, that's from his website I got to hear.
Okay.
And then that talked a little bit about overall some of the stuff that he's doing with the Joyce Theater. But the part that was part I got stuck on, which I think I included it. Oh, the Jen Abrams discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So once I started in one place and ended up somewhere else, I know my notes are not reading.
Well, that's okay. Well, what it seems to me is he has this very long, almost like a blog,
Yeah.
of
Several blogs.
MP3 files that you can go down and listen to these audio interviews. And they're podcasts. They're just not in the iTunes podcast channel.
Yeah.
So last week we talked about how you get an MP3 off and then load it to your iPod, so that's what you would do, basically. And so many of the times when you do your own audio, you're going to have just an MP3 file that people will be able to link to off the wiki. It won't be part of, like, I'm publishing to iTunes and going through all of that.
Okay.
That's certainly an option for you if you decide that you wanted to have a regular podcast type of a thing with your classes or what you're teaching. All of you can do that, and the only thing that Apple requires you to do is have an Apple account. So if you already are buying music through iTunes, you already have an Apple account, and you can publish podcasts for no charge, basically through the podcast channel that they have
Does that
there.
make it more difficult if you give students an assignment that they need to listen to an iPod, listen to a podcast? Will it make it more difficult for them?
It would make them more difficult. They would need iTunes to be able to catch that.
Okay.
What the benefit of putting it this way in MP3 format is anybody with any MP3 player can download this file and put it into their MP3 player. It doesn't have to be an iPod. It doesn't have to be iTunes. iTunes just makes it that seamless thinking of this is content that's coming to me every week. This is someone I like to listen to. I just plug in my iPod, it downloads everything because I had my iTunes open, and I take it, unplug it, and go on my merry little jog and listen to that stuff. So it's a little more work to get it to your iPod or your MP3 player from a website, but it's more compatible with a greater audience, if that's the right
Yeah.
terms. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
So, I mean, I can see that you have a lot of files on here that you could listen to
Yeah.
and pretty much spend your whole time just doing that, which isn't a bad thing, you know. I mean, this is all, I mean, the whole
Yeah.
idea behind this class is that there's professional learning that you can take with you, and that this is going to help you do what you do.
Yeah.
This is great. So, okay, so that's a little showcase of where you are. And then as you do listen to those files, if you could reflect on each one of those, you know,
Okay.
the things that you're learning from each of those. Anne Marie, I know I saw some of the things, some of your main points and your takeaways, and these were things that were from the K-12 online conference. And so I would invite you to visit each other's pages to see what other people are listening to and what they're getting out of it. Mark, yours was interesting, especially the part that you didn't learn anything new on that one. I think that was the one that you said, I didn't learn anything new. Which was the one?
The Radio Lab ones are really good, and the other ones I wasn't very impressed with.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't really gain anything. You know, those were the NPR Science Fridays. Was it just this particular website, or this particular like episodes within that website?
That
or?
one, there was only the one at the time that it was just the one
One file? Okay.
I listened to that one file, and it was...
And which were the ones that you were saying that you thought were really good, these radio labs?
Yeah, the New York City Radio Lab ones, they're really good.
And like what kind of, besides what the main points are, that the brain and body working together, is that all about the brain and body, or is that one particular episode that you listened to?
That one was focused on that, but they're all... I've listened to 3 or 4 of them now, and they always, it seems like in at least 3 of them they've interviewed Oliver Sacks. You know, he's a real famous brain neurologist, psychologist guy and so they've interviewed him. You know the Awakenings, you know the movie Awakenings? He's that doctor.
Okay.
That's Oliver Sacks. But and then it's just edited really well. It's really interesting to listen to, and that one in particular, I did want to, you know, and that was one of the questions I asked. You know, is there a way? I don't even know if this is legal.
Yeah, how to splice them?
Yeah.
You can use GarageBand very easily to drop these MP3 files in there and cut where you don't want, you know, like take the first 2 minutes and then cut it off and then take 2 minutes of another one and make your own custom mix. Now, what you do with that custom mix is where the legality part comes in. It's totally legal for you for your own personal listening, to be able to do that and say you want to cut them up for your students and play this back in the classroom. It's like anything else that's copyrighted. You have a certain amount of time. You can take so much % of a work and so much, you know, so many weeks out of production that you can continue to play that. With permission, though, and so all you need to do is write permission, you know, email the author and say, I would like to take the best of and compile this for my class and publish it or whatever, or use it from now until I leave Stevenson 35 years from now. And if you get permission, then that's fine. But you can physically do that with GarageBand quite easily. And you guys probably do that with your dance mixes and stuff.
I use iMovie a lot
Okay.
because it was in line with Pro Tools.
Okay.
So it was an easy fit, where GarageBand I'm still a little rough on.
Okay, and if that's a possibility, maybe our last class I could show you how to splice some sound files together.
You know, is that something like, can I use Edline now? Could I put that on the Edline links, and the kids could then just go to Edline and download the
Right,
file?
because you would upload it as an MP3 file, just like you would see, you know, what we had on that other dance place. Upload it as an MP3 file, and then they could listen to it there and download it. And I know that the Spanish teachers are doing that right now with their blogs. They have certain blogs that they want the students to listen to that they take from different areas throughout Spain and whatever, and post those MP3s into their Edline space. So the kids can download them and listen to them there.
Well, what's the fair use implications of posting stuff on Edline?
Because it's password protected, it would follow the same guidelines that you would use for classroom use. So think of that as your online extension to your classroom. So you're not republishing for the greater web. No one else can get to that content except for your students that have a password into that site. You could not put it on the Mary Crystal website and have everyone download it, or the dance site or whatever. It would have to be behind a password protected piece. And then you're still, you need to, you know, pay attention to the the fair use portion of that, and how long can I use that, and is it, at some point, because the content is made freely available to you on the web, there's really nothing that you have to go back and say, well, I have to purchase this to use for my classroom. This is just out there. You know, looking at the guidelines on their website just to see if there's any fine print about how you can use their files. You know, there's usually an acceptable use policy or something on those sites. So I would take a look at that. But the fact that you're putting it behind Edline is it's the same as playing it in your classroom. You know, think of that as your online classroom space. So you should be able to fall into that same. I'm not a copyright lawyer, but you know, that's my interpretation. Lightning. Okay. So, but thank you. So we'll keep going along those lines. And Mary, you got anything up there yet?
Basically, I just sort of did a report on going to the conference in New York City, and there are lots of presentations involving blogging and podcasting, sort of some interesting applications of, gee, it's cool technology, but I'm not sure it's all that revolutionary. It's almost like replacing public speaking activities with podcasting, which saves time in the classroom, but you know, as a person who's taught public speaking, it also can save kids from actually getting up and having to deliver a presentation to live bodies in the room. So I would say that it has to sort of be a balance between, you know, offering things in terms of podcasting, and then also making sure that kids do get up in front of their peers and have interpersonal communication. There's some problems with hosting podcasts on different websites, especially if you're hosting podcasts that are produced by minors, because you need permission in some cases from parents. So what teachers have done to get around that is create pseudonyms so that you're not.
And students never use they either don't use their whole name, or they don't use their real name, or they just use their first name. And the Tony Vincent website, the Learning in Hand, I think it's on the resources page, has worked primarily with younger students. I believe he has like a parental form, a sample of a form that you could use for, you know, your students or whatever. So some teachers were advocating that school districts just need to develop sort of a policy that covers all teachers, so that this is the way we would like you to handle publishing kids' stuff on the web, live, you know, whether it's podcasts or video or what have you. So. And the one thing that we've always kind of unwritten rule, I guess, or would even call rule, or guidelines that we've tried to steer teachers toward was that same thing, is that you never identify a student by their first and last name with a picture. First names only if you use anything on the web for them. And you know, there is Laura Brown actually has a release too that she's been using for parents, or something that she'll make available to, just a very generic release that says, yes, my son or daughter's voice or image or something thereof will be on the web, but there'll be nothing connecting him to or her to her name, full name or whatever. So, and then you do want to protect that for the students. But at the same time, I can see where you're talking about the public speaking, how important that is to be able to get up and talk in front of people. But then the message that you're delivering in a podcast is also, because of that wider audience, also elicits a little bit more of a wanting to be polished from the students, because they know it's not just the kids in their classroom. So you could take the recording part of your iPod and have them record it as they public speak it, and then turn that into a podcast. So it's not something that they're actually sitting and recording a podcast, but recording their presentation. And what's powerful about that, because I've done that with several of the things that I do, I'll record the presentation I'm recording right now, go back and listen to how many ums I did, and now that I'm doing video with this, I'm going to see my hands going, and I'm going to, you know, critique myself about my presentation technique. So, anything else that you want to bring up on that, or?
No, just there are people out there trying to find ways to integrate it into, you know, classroom instruction. So, it's just, you know, and NCTE won't license podcasts of their featured speakers just yet. So I guess somebody is working on that in the sort of legal department.
And working with the NCSM group, we did our 12 major speakers, or 10 major speakers, at our conference last year, and got permission from all of them. And they have gotten a lot of positive feedback. I think this is going to sleep on me. Wake up, you. have gotten a lot of positive feedback from the speakers themselves because it actually helps them showcase their presentations for future conferences. Oh, do you want to see how I present or what my message is? So they're really more positive about it than saying, oh, I don't
Yeah,
want to.
our keynote speakers are, writers like Amy Tan and Jonathan Kozel.
Those people
so
I could see
they
probably not.
already, yeah, they already.
I'm talking not the
yeah.
big keynotes, but more the, like, we had major sessions from known people in the mathematics community speaking. So those would be the type of people that we're happy to be on the iTunes channel now. So, Julia, I didn't think I brought your page up. I did everyone else's.
It's about the conference we're participating in.
With the pre-conf,
Yeah, for the first.
the K-12 online,
Yeah.
and then I think you did have the step-by-step classroom. Okay, great. So I would invite you to look at each other's links to see if there's something that is of interest, because even though it's not dance, or it may not be science, or it may not be English related, there might be something that someone else has listened to, or I would certainly like to go back and listen to some of that brain stuff. It sounds to me that would be quite interesting.
Or also from our conference, a major sponsor was Verizon now. Verizon really wants you to use cell phones in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have much time to go down to the sort of exhibit hall to see what were the sort of tools that Verizon was offering teachers in the classroom, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, no longer are the big publishers sort of got all the signage, but it's Verizon. And they also, which is nice, is that they did underwrite the cost of what we had, 20th century literacy room that had computers and teachers, demonstrating how they were using technology in their classroom if they didn't get a slot, sort of in the usual 75.
Like poster sessions or whatever
Yeah,
they call
but
them?
now poster sessions with computers.
Okay. The K-12 online conference has one thing that you might want to listen to that is cell phones in the classroom. It's about an hour long, but there's a great audio file out there of things that teachers are doing in the classroom, and some of the things that you'd be surprised that your handheld phones can now do. And Anne-Marie, I know you listened to that one.
And it's use her song
On the website to go to.
her song for choreography is on her site.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was different.
Okay, and then also, just go to review the downloading and linking and subscribing to podcasts. And I don't know how many of you have done this or looked in the podcast channel. If you were to submit your own, you would go through this little icon here that says, submit my own podcast, and you'd be taken through a whole bunch of series of information. If you are submitting your own, you want to think about this is going to be a regular feature, something that's going to come out every month, every 3 weeks or whatever. As long as you have an Apple ID, that's all you need.
Do they filter those in any way?
They do. They do filter them, and you actually sign a little thing that says this is not explicit, and you rate it yourself, and then they take a look at your file and say, okay, yeah, that's. If they accept it, then you are in the podcast channel. If you just want to browse in podcasts, you can click on the podcast link. On the right-hand side, they do have the Today's Top Podcast. A lot of the NPR things are out there, which are kind of good to listen to. The 60-second science. Did you see that one, Mark? There's a 60-second science one there for you.
Oh, that was the one that didn't look very good.
You didn't think it was very good? Okay. But there are so many different categories, and a lot of them have video now. But you could just search in just about any venue for content. And if I were going to, let me see how they dance. Just curious if there's anything else out there on dance.
You have to be careful what you get.
And then when I do a search, I can filter down. I want just the podcast. And the other thing I would strongly recommend is the iTunes U. I did put a new link on the resources page about content that Berkeley is putting out in California, and how these truck drivers are listening to these philosophical speakers, the lectures that are being put out from Berkeley as they drive the truck. So here's
MIT does that too.
a lot of them under the iTunes U. So these are just some podcasts on dance. If there's anything that looks not Mary Murphy Ballroom Dancing, TV and Film. There's some of them, I don't know if there's anything good there. Dance 101, how about something like that, if I were just curious to see what that's all about. We actually want to get the... So you click the arrow, it comes up category education and English. It gives you a small description down below about the podcast. Some other people who have rated it. I'm a ballerina and pliés are beyond basic, like 2-year-old basic. They need to put like some point lessons on this thing. Someone who who reviewed that. But she gave them 4 stars nonetheless. If you decide, and it looks like there's only 1 episode of this so far, and this was a whole year ago. So someone, probably was deciding, oh, do you think I could do a podcast? And they never continued on. So otherwise you would see many, many episodes. So I wouldn't think this would be something you'd want to subscribe to, but it might be something that you'd want to watch. So you could go through that. I'm going to go back, a little back button up here. And if I wanted to filter that out again from podcasts and go to iTunes U, remember, iTunes U are the universities that are now putting content out there. And so you have Duke and Stanford and UMBC, all the different places, Seattle Pacific now, that you want to go and take a look at the Duke University dance program. And you might want to have a look at what they're doing in dance. You can
How did you narrow? You did the search up in the top.
I did a search up here, and I don't know if there's probably 6 ways to Sunday to do things, but I start up there, and then when I came to my results, let me go back, there's a pull-down menu here that you can filter it down.
Okay.
So I'm back at iTunes U, I'm going to look at the dance program, and now that you can see, I'm going to move this window up just a little bit. And the artist is all John Hanks. Do they have the dates on there? Last modified Thursday, November 22nd. So we have some, and that was 24 different tracks in the audio. So you can go through these. If they're video, you're not going to be able to download them to these iPods, but if they're audio, and there are some of the audio files, then they even have them in audio format that you can get them as well. And they're all free, which I like that. So if you just want to get 1 or 2 episodes, you click Get, and it goes into your iTunes library. Once it's in your iTunes library, you just drag it into your iPod, once your iPod's connected, because you're manually managing the music. If you want to subscribe and get the episodes every single time that they come out, you click on Subscribe. And there are some options that you want to pay attention to when you are subscribing. So now I'm subscribed to the Duke University dance program, and you will see that it's going to download the most recent episode, which was that one from last Thursday. They were even publishing on Thanksgiving, you would think. But I could go back and I could get, all of these look like they were published on Thursday, but these are 1-minute, 2-minute little things, going back even further, down to a little further beyond that. The settings that I have for each individual podcast is important to note. When you are having podcasts come in automatically, how often do you want your iTunes to check for new episodes? Do you want it to just every day? Like I've got mine once a day, so at 3:44 tomorrow, it's going to, if my iTunes is connected, it's going to connect out to the iTunes master library and say, oh, there's 3 new episodes. It's automatically going to download those into my iTunes. So the benefit of using iTunes is that you subscribe, content comes to you whenever it's published. What do I want to do when new episodes are available? Download just the most recent one, or I could download all of them, or I could do nothing and go and read them and decide which ones that I want to get. I usually keep mine and download the most recent one and see what currently is there, and then I'll go down the list and I'll go and get 1 or 2 other things that look interesting to me without downloading all of them. And then your last choice is the keep part. Like, what do you really want to keep? And this is what's nice about, unfortunately, my iTunes library is like really huge because I keep everything. But I could say anything that's unplayed, keep, or I could just keep the last 2 episodes or the last 3 episodes. And what happens to those ones that you've listened to, then they just disappear. They just unsubscribe, you know, go off into, they disappear. They just get deleted from your library automatically, so it manages it for you as well.
Does, like, if you listen to on your iPhone, iTunes on your computer, then you would sync it up and it would know what you listen to?
Yes. So yeah, it would know that it's now played because next time that you sync. But remember, if you're manually managing, it may not. If you are automatically syncing and having it sync, then it would say, oh, this has been played, this is not, and so it matches exactly what's in your iTunes. So if you're doing it that way with your own computer, that would be probably preferred as opposed to Anne-Marie and Julia, who are moving around to different computers and whatnot. So. And I'm, like I said, I'm probably the one that keeps everything. And then later on, I'll go and burn them on a CD and then archive them because, oh, they're really, really good and I don't want to get rid of them, but I need to get space. So you have all those options under your settings for every podcast that you subscribe to. So you can choose one that just, oh, don't ever download this, and so that's important. Podcasts automatically show up in a podcast directory over here. So if I look at music, you're not going to see anything except the 5 or 6 songs that I purchased. If I want to look at my podcast, the number 3 means what? What do you think the number 3 is for?
3 new ones?
3 new ones I haven't listened to yet. So there's 3 new ones that have come in that I haven't yet listened to.
When you unsubscribe, do you lose everything or you just don't get anything new?
You don't get anything new. And remember that preference that says, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep everything? So if I decide that I really don't want this dance anymore, but I have that first episode, I'll click back on the dance one and I'll unsubscribe. And now notice how it's changed. Big Jump stayed, but that whole long list of other files that it's possible for me to get is gone. And I could go back and resubscribe. If I totally delete Duke University out of my iTunes library, I'd have to go back to the iTunes store, go back to that podcast channel, find it again, and then resubscribe it again. If I wanted to take a look at this file, one of the things I could do in iTunes is I could choose something called Show in Finder. You know, where is this going on my computer? And it's important to note that when you download any type of music or any podcast into iTunes, that it goes into a directory that's part of your home library. So if you open your house, your home directory, and you open up music, you're going to see an iTunes folder in there. And you never want to go in that folder and start moving things around. Like iPhoto and iTunes, you want to keep the folders, stay out of the folders except just to look. Don't start renaming things in there because then your iTunes will no longer know how to talk to that information. Because basically your iTunes is just a database of the files and it's doing its own organization. So if I say show it in Finder, it's going to take me out to, I'm actually in my music folder, and I'm going to do a command click here so that you can see the trail. So I command click on the title of a folder. This is a Duke University dance program. It made that folder inside of my podcast directory, which is part of my iTunes music folder, which is part of my iTunes folder, which is in my music of my house. So that's where it's drilled down into that database and created that. Now if I delete totally Duke University, that folder is going to disappear as well. So let's try that. I'm going to go back and say I really don't want Duke University at all anymore. I'm going to press the delete key. And it says, are you sure you want to remove the selected podcast and their episodes? Everything's going to go away. Are you sure? Yes, remove. Now what about the stuff? Because if I move them to the trash, should I still keep them in the iTunes music folder, or you totally want to get rid of this on your computer? I would say move to trash. Or, you know, you have a choice here. I'm going to move. I don't really care about dancing at Duke. So now what's happened is that information is gone. If I go back to my house, I'm just going to hide iTunes here and go to my house. And I have my music folder. And I have my iTunes and my iTunes music. And here's my podcast, but I no longer have that folder from Duke University. So it's very nice. It cleans up things when you tell it like delete, go away, unsubscribe. It clears it out. And the same thing when you say your subscribe options. When I'm done listening, just clear it out. You know, makes it easy management on your part. Any questions about that? So I would invite you to do a little bit of searching in the podcast channel to see if you can find some things in the university level, and I know there's a whole physics course out there, Mark, at MIT that you could take a look at, if you found that yet. Physics 101 or something like that that's out there with lectures and whatnot. I hear music. That's you? Something's playing. Okay, you can stop it there. Okay, the last thing I just wanted to do is show you how the recording piece works. With your, and I have a microphone that'll probably work for you.
Yay!
But we need to test it out. With your iPods, you have a small recording device. This is a microphone. This also has a small speaker on it, so that if you don't have your headset or your earbuds, you can actually listen to what's going on through this. It's a really tiny little speaker, but you could hear out of it as well. When you plug it in and turn on your iPod, I'm just going to power it up here. Right away, it's set at the 000 mark. It's ready to record. So because I plugged it in and then turned it on, right away it knows it's ready to record. If I just press the center to select, it's now counting up. I am now recording. This is a test. I'm going to keep this about 6 inches away from my face. If I move it a little further out, you'll still be able to hear it. It has very good ambient pickup noise. Oftentimes when I go to conferences, this is what I use to listen to the keynote speaker. I'll just put this out on the table, just like you see it here, and listen to whatever's going on and record that entire session so that I can go back later and listen to it again. If you wanted to, when I do presentations, I'll tuck it in my pocket over here somewhere and do my presentation, and then later on publish that as an audio file that people can listen to. I've now talked 44 seconds. I'm going to press the center again to stop. It's on pause right now, so I could pause, compose my thoughts, I can talk some more, or I could just dial down to the next one that says stop and save. So I'm going to stop and save, and now it's saving the file. It will be under your voice memos, and I should be able to go back and play it. Now counting up. I am now recording. This is a test. I'm going to keep this about 6 inches away from my face. If I move it a little further out, get a difference. Oftentimes when I go to conferences, this is what I use to listen to the keynote speaker. I'll just put this out on the table, just like you see it here, and just whatever's going on and record it. Okay, so the microphone also uses as a playback, so you can listen. The small speaker that's in there, you probably don't want to be connected to the... Right, we'll just stop that. So now that I've got this audio file on my iPod, how do I now get this into my computer? I'm going to take off my microphone and plug in my... What are you doing?
Actually, that's a good question. 'Cause, like, anytime I have my mind plugged into my computer, it always flashes, do not disconnect.
Because you've enabled it as a hard drive device, which means that before you take it out, you actually have to take the iPod icon and drop it to the eject button or trash.
Okay.
If you take that feature off where you can't put files on there, as soon as you quit iTunes, it won't give you that disconnect feature anymore.
Okay, so in order to do that recording, we would have to be out of iTunes.
You wouldn't want to be connected to your computer at all.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
But now that I've finished recording, and I've got a voice memo on there, it actually goes into my voice memos. Now I'm going to connect to the computer and show you what happens when you have a voice memo on your computer when you plug it in. So now I'm going to plug this in.
Oh.
It comes up with the do not disconnect. In a moment. Firefox in the way here. Hide Firefox. I wonder if I cancel it out. Normally it'll come up with a message that says your iPod contains new voice memos. Do you want to download them? I think I might have clicked cancel too soon. But it doesn't mean that I can't download them now because they're not showing. Oh, this is that bad cord.
Need another one?
No, I haven't. I'll have to find one. Do you have yours with you? Oh, how far was yours then?
I have two.
We'll do that again. We went through this last week. Because it keeps showing up, but then it doesn't show up.
Get rid of that cord.
Thank you. Oh, yours. Okay, it's coming up. It sees that. I'm not seeing it on the left-hand side. Still doesn't think it's there. What do you think all that's about? No, it should just show up. I know I did this last week and it was working. Okay. So plan B, when that doesn't work, when it doesn't automatically come up, if you open up the iPod, you can actually see under recordings, there's a new folder now, and there's my WAV file. And I could add this into my iTunes library manually now, because normally it'll say, there's new voice memos on your iPod, would you like to download them? At that point you would say yes, and then it said, do you want to erase them off the iPod after you download them or keep them? Now, I don't know why I'm not getting that feature, but I have this WAV file and I could just simply drag and drop it right into my iTunes library, just the same as we dragged and dropped any sound files in last time.
And in which slide? Oh, here it is. I found it.
And just drop it into, just drag and drop it right into your iTunes library. It'll catalog it automatically under music, I believe. So here it is. And notice how it's dated. It comes in with today's date, 2007, 11/26, 1648. So that's 4:48 and 22 seconds. That's the time stamp. So every file that you do is time stamped, which makes it really easy to go back later on and say, when was that? I could then further change this, because I know what this is, and I could call this iPod class 11/26, and I can give it my own name. And there I have this file that I can now listen to in iTunes. I'm now recording. This is a test. I'm going to keep this about 6 inches away from my face. Okay, so you heard all that. So give it a try. Just try a 30-second recording right now to make sure that that technique works for you. And if you would like to record on mine, you can.
Well, I didn't bring my microphone back.
Okay, and we'll let you use mine then.
No, but it's not for me. No, I can use mine.
I don't know why I'm not. This is a little funky. Here's your cord back. Go ahead, try that. And let me go get my other microphone that I've got.
You can hear Julia talking so loud, she's disturbing my recording. I'm sorry, not to disturb your recording.
No, what setting did you have it on to
Once you copy it in, it just automatically goes into record mode, and then it says something like record mode. See how it says record or cancel?
So where did you start it?
Just by inserting the mic, it automatically comes up to it now. But you have to be disconnected from the
You gotta
computer.
disconnect that thing.
Yeah.
Wait, this is speaking.
So does it have like a voice editing, so as it recorded your voice, you could change the qualities you don't
But
like?
you could do that in the
Right.
You can change your pitch and make it a little faster, a little slower.
That's so cool.
Now we need to download it.
This is for you.
So now we just pop in and
That goes on the bottom of your iPod, and then basically you just press the talk. And you'll get the same thing when you plug it in as far as the menu that says go ahead and record that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you get it? Did it come up and say you have new voice memos?
Yes.
And see, it automatically comes in. So go ahead and play it now if you can hear it.
Well, I'm trying to play it.
Just highlight it, yep.
Okay, now we're recording. I don't know where we were to record, but it doesn't matter because it was on our
You have a very good speaking voice.
I know, it's like, what do you say?
I'm trying not to disturb you.
funny.
That recording was not long enough. It was 30 seconds and that's about 15 seconds.
It's interesting that the Duke website is all music. Just music for ballet classes.
Is that what they are?
Yeah, and it gives you the time signature.
Now, if you look at the video, though,
There was
any-
only one that had a video, and it's just an introduction to the Duke
Okay.
Dance Department. But I found some other stuff on here, which is cool from,
So that
I don't know what
would be
university it
what I
was
would want to play
from.
back now.
But I downloaded one, which is kind of UMBC.
I saw that, University of, wait, I know what that is.
It's just really quiet.
Is it British Columbia?
You should have just
Maybe so. Well, it's a really interesting video. It's very...
University of Manitoba, British Columbia?
Maybe so.
Maybe?
Gotcha.
No?
Thank you.
Let's see if I can find that.
Once you can play it, I think
Explore.
it's
So, it's kind of interesting. It's not really moving.
Okay.
It's more of a obscure, site-specific piece, and it's really pedestrian. It's not
Shirley, could you go back to the assignments now? Are we supposed to record like a comment on here and then post it as a link to this page?
Yes.
Okay, a comment on whatever.
Basically, think of not more than a minute or 2 minutes, just a
Okay.
little, it could be a demo file. I would like it to be something educationally valuable, not just like what I just did, but something that's more profound.
Okay.
But let me show you what you need to do, and we'll work on this part next time when we get together to get it actually posted, because I wouldn't
But that's why I
expect
was
you not
going to
to do
ask you, how
that.
do you link it to your page?
Because what has to happen is you have to convert it to an MP3 before you can post it. And there's a preference file in iTunes that you would change. And I'll have a handout for you next week how to change the WAV file to an MP3, and then we'll show you how to actually put that out there. But what's important to know is when we convert them is that what I just showed you is to show that in Finder, because once you convert it, you need to go out to where it is and then capture that MP3 file so that you could upload it into the web space. So we'll browse to select it. We'll need to know where that is. So when you come in next time, have your recorded message done, and then we'll spend like the 5 or 10 minutes that it'll take to convert it, upload it, and do all that. Okay? So that'll give you a couple weeks to think about what your wonderful message is going to be for education. All right, I think everything else we're clear on as far as what we need to do. Come back and
I
see.
deleted it.
Yeah.
Just continue filling out your little learning journals as you're going along.
Shut it off and just pull it up.
Vote for, at some point between now and the next 2 weeks, vote for the one that you determine is the best, and be prepared to share your rationale when you come back and who you voted for and why. Okay? And then if you have a favorite of the ones that you found out of your little notebook for learning, we'll put that in the playlist for them, and then we'll do the uploading actually when you come next time. All right?
What is that Maury's last name, the one that...
Reese. R-E-E-C-E.
Okay.
Maury Reese. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll stop this.